think that fixed it. Yes or no? This should be. I can actually see the bars. I know what happened now. I don't know how in the world it did that. I didn't set that. That's something that went automatically to the other setting. Um, yes. Tell me if you need it louder. I can set the volume here. Check, 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 check. Ha ha. All right. Let me start over then. Today we are talking about. Oh, too loud. Okay. Hello, hello, hello. All right. So we are talking about how important it is to practice slow. Um, and what I was saying earlier is that I've got a book that now the book was a ebook already, but there are people that were asking for the physical book on Amazon and places like that. I actually had someone tell me the other day, oh, he wouldn't buy it from Amazon because he knows he has friends that are authors. I forget who said this. I think one of my students, and he knows that they don't make any money on Amazon. But I don't have a problem with that. You know, I would much rather have the the wide coverage of Amazon so that more people have the material than to make more money per book. Because to me, what's more important is that people get this these materials, right? Anyway, so in the book that I published today, I did the last steps today. Um, I used from this book famous trumpet players. Uh, Now, what I was saying before, before I realized that we didn't have sound, um, I realized that, oh, what am I saying? This kind of like pulled the rug under my feet. I'm not thinking straight again. Anyway, so this guy, Dr. Robert Wiest, I think he's passed away now. But one day I get a email from him, and he says, "I'm interested in your books. Would you trade?" So I sent him a couple books. He sent me a couple books back, and I think I got the better end of the deal, right? These are just amazing books. Um, but anyway, the idea of this book is that there are a bunch of quotes from different trumpet teachers. Most of it's on how to teach trumpet, how to practice, stuff like that. Right up my alley, right? Um, And I'm going to read this section to you here. It says, "The root of playing correctly. To improve and perfect any kind of playing, dot, dot, dot. Nothing is more essential than to practice slowly at first." That's from Edwin Franco Goldwyn. And there's commentary underneath, relative commentary. He says, "Maurice Andre told me the same thing in 1966 in Paris. I played a new piece for him, Pavane et Saltier by Bernal. I was sight reading it and played it too fast, forcing myself to make needless mistakes. He remarked, in French of course, that with his busy schedule, this is the best part of it, right? With his busy schedule, we're talking about the guy who was reputed to be the best trumpet player in the world at the time. With his busy schedule, he would never play difficult passages up to tempo at first reading, as they take far too long to prepare that way. Instead, he plays them at slower tempo, enabling him to play all the notes correctly, which ultimately reduces his preparation time. We're talking about the best classical trumpet player in the world. Doesn't dare practice the stuff quickly at first. The best trumpet player in the world doesn't dare. And this reminds me of a quote from another book. Um, and I don't know which book it was because I bought uh, two different books at the same time. Both of them were written at the same time by the same author, I think. Both of them had interviews from virtuoso piano players. But one of the quotes was talking about this same thing, right? How important it is if you want to be a virtuoso piano player, how important it is to practice slow. That's the first thing. And do lots and lots of repetition. And the book said that ironically, the people who need that the most are the ones who don't do it. And I know I've said that before here, but we're putting it in context with this quote from Maurice Andre. Surely, if we're going to categorize musicians who quote unquote need it most and who don't need it at all, surely we would think that Maurice Andre doesn't need to practice slow, but that's not correct. That's incorrect. So what the teacher that was being interviewed who said that in that other book applies here. What he said applies here. The people who need it most don't do it. Um, and here we have an example of Maurice Andre saying, I would never do what you just did. I would never just jump in and play everything fast the first time I played it. Now, nobody would ever argue that Maurice Andre couldn't play fast, right? So, yeah. Um, yeah, and you know, I think the reason why this is on my mind. Oh, you know what? I'm going to read the second paragraph here. It is common practice among unskilled players to take a new piece and hack away at it, making mistakes of all sorts. I'm going to read that again. It is common practice among unskilled players to take a new piece and hack away at it, making mistakes of all sorts. By beating the piece to death, they hope to eventually wrench out all the problems. For example, if they make an error of rhythm, they will blast away at the figure perhaps a dozen times until they finally get it right. What they have done is play the figure correctly once out of 12 attempts. They delude themselves by believing that they have finally got it. Those are his quotations. Then they go on to the next obstacle and do likewise. The next time they play the piece, they still can't play it correctly. What a waste of time. That's what he ends this section on. He always follows up each section with questions. So let's read the questions. When you sight read a piece, do you study it carefully before attempting to play it? Now that I don't actually always agree with. I think you should sometimes sight read. Now it depends on what is it for. Is it a piece for sight reading? Then don't do what he's saying. If you're sight reading a piece the first time, just to check it out, and it's a piece that you want to learn, I agree with him. Except that I don't agree with sight reading. I think sight reading should be completely separate from learning a piece. I really do. Now, sometimes with my students, I will have them sight read something if I think it's in their skill level, and then we'll go back and learn it. Um, but that's not a performance piece. We would never do that with a performance piece. That would be something we do with etudes. Second question. If so, what aspects do you study beforehand? Yeah, I'm not so into that. If you are a hacker or a poor reader, what would it take to make you study the overall demands of the music and to play slowly and repeat correctly many times the problems at hand? What a wonderful book. I don't know how much of this book has influenced my teaching, but it's got to be a lot. It's got to be a lot. It's quite possible that my stance towards slow playing came from what I just read to you. It's quite possible. But I've been teaching it so long now that it feels like my idea. Right? So, and the reason why I'm talking about this now is because I do have some students right now. Not as many as I used to, but I do have some students that I gave a student a lesson last week, and he wanted to be more challenged, and you know I understand because I was his age once, right? And I understand that desire. If you are eager to learn, you don't want to just play easy stuff. But you know what I tell all these students? I tell them that. So, oh, by the way, there was another quote that I read before I figured out that you guys couldn't hear me. I did this as an introduction to the subject. Let me see if I can find it again. So, this is a quote from Bill Vacchiano. It says that the heading is playing that is made easier can be more successful. Well, obviously, right? So, Bill Vacchiano was my teacher's teacher. I I have like a weird trumpet teacher family tree where I traced all of my teachers back, who was their teacher, who was their teacher, who was their teacher, all the way back. They all end up at Ernest S. Williams. That's very interesting, right? I can trace all of my teachers back to Ernest S. Williams. Um, some of them take a little longer to get there. Uh, but yes, my last teacher's teacher was Bill Vacchiano. And Bill Vacchiano said, I think one of the reasons I lasted 38 years in the New York Philharmonic is that I used the best trumpet and the most comfortable key for each composition. And so, isn't that counter to what a lot of the young students want for themselves? They want the challenge. They want the challenge. They want to feel like they're getting something done. But that feeling of getting something done is not what gets things done. The best, most virtuosic trumpet playing is always easy. It's never hard. It's never difficult. The best, most virtuosic trumpet playing. For those of you who might not know what virtuosic means, we're talking about the most skilled, most capable musicians in the world. And when you study virtuosity, when you study it as a subject like I have, you discover that it's easy for them. The only time They look like they're really trying hard is when they want you to think that they're trying real hard. Right? That's the only time. So they'll go, they'll put all the expressions into it, right? But that's show. A truly great player doesn't have to do that. They do that so that you can see that how good they are. Because they know that a lot of people can't hear the difference. So they will do stuff on stage to make it look like they're really trying hard. When in reality, I heard the same thing about Bruce Lee. They said, Bruce Lee, it was an interview. Bruce Lee, do you speed your movies up? He says, oh no. It sort of sounds like the what do you call it? What's the guy's name? The guy that was like Texas Ranger. They always have those jokes about. The last joke I heard was that he doesn't do push-ups. He pushes the planet, right? He's so strong that when he does push-ups, it knocks the planet off orbit, right? But that's what we mean by virtuosity. Let me turn this down. I see why it's too loud. Check, check, check. All right, so that's what we want for our playing. We want it to be so easy that all of it is just within our grasp. Like the hardest of the hard is still within our grasp, and that's what I read in that one book. Chuck Norris, that's the guy's name. That's what I read in that book. Is the way you get there is through slow, repetitive practice. The boring stuff. Really, that's what it comes down to. The way you become a Chuck Norris virtuoso is sort of like Tai Chi for trumpet. And I've mentioned that before, right? It's sort of like Tai Chi. You have to practice slow and repeat the stuff over and over again. Now, it's a little different when we're talking about routines, because the routine shouldn't be repeated like that because you are already repeating it. That's why it's called a routine, right? You're already repeating it. So, but you're doing it you're doing it once a day, but you're doing it again. You know, maybe not the exact same exercise, but you're doing the same task on a daily basis, so a regular basis. Okay. And what we're talking about now is the slow part. How many people want to do the tonalization studies? Da da dee da dee dee da dee dee da dee dee da dee da 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 da. You're not getting the full benefit of the exercises that way. You got now. So what we're talking about now is slowing the tempo down. The other half of this conversation has to do with slowing the process down as well. One of the ways that we do in my lessons, one of the ways we slow that process down is to sing and finger. I'll tell you what, I used to be one of those people that I was just too fast, too fast, too fast. Not just the tempo, but I wanted to get more done every day. And when I learned about the first thing I learned was about the rest as long as you play. If you played something 8 measures long, rest 8 measures. If you played something 4 bars long, rest 4 bars, and then do it again. Or go on to the next piece or whatever, but you're supposed to rest as long as you play. When I first figured that out, I didn't know about the singing and fingering. And I'm not sure where I got that from. I might have made it up. I don't know. not singing and fingering in general, but as a way to make sure that you're counting, have enough time off of your face between exercises. And same thing, right, by the way, with working on music, same thing. But when I first started resting as long as I played, I had panic attacks. After all, I think I had been practicing that way for 15 years, and it was a major part of my whole life. So when I first put those brakes on, it wrecked my life. So I hope that makes sense, right? I just wasn't used to stopping. But I'll tell you what, when you don't stop, there's so many mental problems that seep into your playing that could have been avoided. So you slow down the process. How else can you slow down the process? With the more repetition. That's a wonderful way to slow down the process. You put those two together, and now you've got something amazing, right? Slow down the process. Let me make it clear what I mean by slow down the process. You want to, on purpose, take longer to finish. You want to, on purpose. So, like, I'm working on right now. I think I wrote the final bit of content in I'm going to call the book now The Tonalization Method. It's over 80 pages of text talking about the tonalization method, not necessarily just the tonalization studies. Of course, that's part of it. But there's an entire method that usually I only share with my students. And yes, when I'm writing that book, I'm talking about, for example, before you do the tonalization studies, that you should do the expansion studies. Now, the expansion studies take a while to do. They take longer than the tonalization studies because there's more repetitions. You're going to do over 150 repetitions depending on your range. Now, let me be clear. People who can already play those scales don't need to do the expansion studies. The expansion studies are just for people who are struggling with the scales. Like you always forget to play A sharp in the key of B or whatever. And I mean always, like you just can't play the scale right. A lot of that has to do, by the way, with having hacked earlier. Remember how Dr. Wiest is saying in that quote that if you just hack away, you're never going to play it right. And this is just as true for the scales as it is for anything else, a piece of music or whatever. If all you did was hack away, you're going to have trouble with that for a long time. That's why Maurice Andre said, I would have never done what you just did, because I don't have time to fix those mistakes. That's what Maurice Andre meant, right? That's what Maurice Andre meant. I don't have time to fix those mistakes. Okay? So when we do the expansion studies correctly, the whole point, now there is, you can hash that up just as badly as you could hash anything else up if you're not careful. You have to be careful. When you're doing those expansion studies, make sure you're playing the right notes. There's absolutely no reason to get wrong notes in the expansion studies. They start off so easy that you would have to literally not care whether or not you're doing it right to do it wrong. Okay? So we do the first exercise on the expansion. We do it 10 times. It doesn't matter that you can already do it. In fact, isn't that what the quote said? That people will repeat it until they get it right. You know, I have this thing that I call the scoreboard, and I use that scoreboard to show the students what happens when they practice that way. They have, just like this guy said, and maybe I got it from him. Just like he says, you've developed the habit of playing it incorrectly. We are creatures of habit. We are creatures of habit. And if you, the idea that we can make mistakes and fix them is false. We want to, if we care about how well we play, we want to practice in a way that there are no mistakes. But like I said, with the scales, the best way to do that is with the expansion studies. You get started first with the expansion studies so that the fingerings are under your fingers. Then you go on to the tonalization studies. That way you eliminate so many of the mistakes that could happen. But it takes time. Anyway, let me read some of these. One time, this is from Seppo, one time when I was studying at the academy, I felt frustrated with the orchestra passage, contemporary music. I asked my teacher, a big name, could you show me how to play this? He told me clearly, never ask me to perform a piece which I have not practiced. That has been on my mind ever since that. That's correct. Okay. You know, this is what you just shared, Seppo, is in line with everything that I know about proper practice. It's everything. It's in line completely with what I know about proper practice. If you want to do well on the trumpet, you practice slowly. You practice lots of repetitions. Okay, so there's times with my students, we will do less than 10 repetitions. Usually, that's because they already practiced something almost exact or maybe exact, just like that earlier on in the piece. So we won't do, or if it's something that they covered in a previous piece that they should be able to play now. So sometimes, yes, we will do less than 10 repetitions. 10 is the official minimum, but it's only a minimum if you can't play it. If you can already play it, then that's, some people would say, don't even waste your time doing that part again, right? Now, if you want to be really, really good, then 10 times is just the minimum. So, like, for example, now, why are the scales so important? Because that is the essence of all the fingerings you're going to ever have in any of the music. It doesn't cover all the fingerings at the first level. Don't get me wrong. And it doesn't. But the music that we play is built out of the music theory stuff, right? And the music theory stuff is the scales. It is the arpeggios. It's that stuff. And so when you're doing now, we don't apply this to the tonalization studies because that you keep repeating that for the rest of your life. But when we're doing the expansion studies, those expansion studies are foundational. They are what create the foundation in your mind, in your fingers, in your ear. So I say that it's dreadfully boring to do 10 times. But if you're real serious about being a great trumpet player, why not 20 times? Why not 30 times? You know, there was a story. If I'm repeating some of this, you guys can say, yes, you already told us that. Okay. There was a student in one of the high schools here on the south side of Houston who was taking college classes while he was in high school. And I forget what it was. I don't think it was an associate's degree. I think he got a bachelor's degree in mathematics and aced it the same time as when he graduated from high school. It might have been an associate's degree, but I remember it as being a bachelor's. And when they interviewed him to ask him how did he do this, he said he did every homework assignment, every math problem from every homework assignment that he ever had 5 times. It's the same concept. He applied what I'm teaching people now about practicing music. He applied that to his math, and it worked. He had a bachelor's by the time he graduated from high school. And the thing is if I remember right, he didn't get the answers wrong ever. Like if you tested him, he never got it wrong. Well, of course, because that's what he did with all his time. And I'll bet you $5 because this is how virtuosity works. I'll bet you $5, which is a figure of speech. Sorry. I'll bet you $5 that he was fast. I'll bet you $5 he was real fast. Right? So yes, this is how this works. You train your mind by doing lots of repetition and doing it very slowly. Jeffrey, hello Jeffrey. Jeffrey says, what do you mean by rest as long as you play? So that's on, in my book where we talk about the 3 levels of rest, this is the beat level. So however number of beats or measures that you played, that's how much you rest before you play again. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I do cheat, right? I think the most I cheat is about 3/4. Okay, I take, I might, if it took 10 beats, I might actually rest 7.5 beats or whatever. But yes, that's what it is. However long you played, take the horn off your lips and rest that long before you play again. This is something that was taught to me in the late 90s amongst the orchestra people. Remember that I originally wanted to be an orchestra player. I wanted my career to be in orchestra. The reason I quit was because I have had a hearing loss all this time. And I realized that with the accents that people have, like I've never been in an orchestra where the the conductor didn't have an accent. And it makes it real hard for me. So that's why I never pursued the orchestra stuff. It's because of my hearing loss. There's a whole story that goes with that, but I won't share that today. But yes, I wanted to be an orchestra player, and the orchestra guys in the late 90s were very big into this rest as long as you play thing. And I've embraced it my whole career. I think that part of the reason why I had my crash and burn scenario in college was because I did not rest as long as I played. I was one of those guys that would plant the horn on my lips, flip the pages, and not take the horn off the lips for hours. I used to play like that. I think that's why I crashed and burned. Now, I'm glad I crashed and burned because a lot of what I teach today probably would never have happened. It was my crash and burn scenario that brought me to a lot of the understanding about the trumpet that I have today. I'm not saying, you know, just saying that good can come out of bad, right? There's a lot of good that can come out of the bad. At the time, I didn't know that's what it was. I thought I had a bad embouchure. I didn't realize that bad embouchure was created by my ambition. I probably didn't originally have a bad embouchure. That embouchure probably slipped down because I wasn't resting. I didn't take days off. I didn't rest as long as I played. All of that. Even after I fixed my embouchure, I wasn't resting properly. That was 1985 when I fixed it. I don't think I started resting as long as I played until about 87, 88. But then it became a major part of my approach. All right. YCC says, hello, Master from Chicago. Hello, nice to see you. I don't know if I told you guys I used to live in Chicago. It was when was it? 1987. In fact, that's the orchestra. I was hanging out with a bunch of orchestra people in Chicago for about 4 months. And I think that's where I heard the first time rest as long as you play. They were the guys I was hanging out with were all students at Northwestern. Jeffrey says English with a strong accent is very difficult to understand. Are you talking about me? Any questions? Oh, Larry says he's from an alum from Northwestern. Yeah, I had one lesson while I was there with Luther Didrikson. Jeffrey says my English is perfect. Well, I wouldn't say that. All right. Any other questions? Yeah, you know what? You guys have heard me talk about the trumpet guard thing, and I don't like to think that I was that bad. But that was pretty bad, right? And I was always so eager, so ambitious to learn. That's why I don't have a degree, by the way. How many times when I was in school did they say, Eddie, shut your mouth, just get the piece of paper? But I wasn't there to get a piece of paper. I was there to learn. I was not there to get a piece of paper. And the way my head works, I couldn't have just like bit my tongue and I couldn't do that. My personality type. I was there to learn. Larry asks, what is a good approach to dealing with frustration? Learning and playing the trumpet. I would say the most important thing is what we're talking about here. Slow everything down. Slow the process down. So when I said earlier, we were talking about slowing the tempo down. That's one thing, right? That's part of it. But you should also slow the process down. Don't try to have an assignment done by next week just because it's next week. Take the whole process so slowly. You know, I've had in the past students that their ambition before they got to me, their ambition, the whole hacking, like what this guy's talking about, what Dr. Wiest was talking about, the hacking that they did at the beginning turned them into terrible players. And, you know, I still teach people who are struggling like that, but we have to basically reprogram their whole mind. So now, the frustration part of it, the frustration part, that I think comes from trying to find the right words for this. You know, the frustration is always because we're not where we want to be. Right? We want to be out there, and right now we're just right here. This is the whole donkey and the carrot thing. I talk to my students all the time about the donkey and the carrot. Where we want to, what is the nature of the donkey and the carrot? The guy's got a stick. The carrot is always out ahead of the donkey. He's that's the carrot is on a stick, so every step that the donkey takes, the carrot goes one more step forward. That is the summary of our frustration, and it never goes away. And I think the way we deal with that frustration is to accept the fact that it's never going to go away. That it's a natural part of being a trumpet player. You know, accepting that as part of the, you know, this is why some people quit as professionals. They thought that everything about a music career would be fun, so they went into music. But the truth is, the better you get, it's just like the Apostle Paul in the Bible. He says, the more righteous I become, the more I realize I'm not righteous at all. And it's the same thing. So didn't the Apostle Paul in the Bible express his frustration that he knows to do the right thing and he does the wrong thing? And he knows not to do the wrong thing? Anyway, you get my point, right? This is the same thing. For us, that never goes away. That never goes away. So the frustration is always there. So you have to acknowledge it and put it aside. Do not let the frustration control you, because that's what makes you not rest. That's what makes you not do as many repetitions. That's the kind of stuff, when you let the frustration take charge, that's the kind of stuff that turns you into a hack. I'm using his words, the book that I just read to you guys. That's the kind of stuff that turns you into a hack. Don't let yourself be controlled. I remember reading a quote from Cicero many years ago, where Cicero said, he's one of the Stoics, right? Cicero said that it's not that the Stoics don't feel emotion. It's that we don't, and I shouldn't have said we. I'm not a Stoic. I like the word Stoic as an adjective. There's some weird things about the philosophy that I don't like, but he says it's not that we don't have emotions. We still experience emotions, but we don't let them control us. We don't let the emotions control our behavior. And in that sense, I am not a Stoic, but I'm Stoic. I'll tell people that I'm a Stoic Christian. That way, it's an adjective for the Stoic and noun for the Christian. Meaning that I don't let my emotions control my Christian behavior. A lot of people are hedonistic Christians, that their Christianity is based on their feelings. And that's not me. I'm not criticizing people like that, but that's not me. Anyway, so talking about practicing, the way you deal with the frustration is to just don't let it deal with you. Acknowledge the frustration, then get the work done. I often tell the students, it's just business. The process of practicing is just business. There's no emotion wrapped up in it at all. You just do what you know needs to get done. And you do it in a very deadpan way. There's no emotions, there's no passion, nothing like that. Save all that for the stage. Save that for your performances. Don't, there's people that say, oh, it's your passion that will guide you. No. Oh, it's your passion will make you get the work done. Nope. Passion is fleeting. Passion goes away. Like I said, that's why a lot of people quit. Because they lost that passion. Well, welcome to the real world. Right? Let's see, what else do we have? Jeffrey says, you're very understandable and you speak slowly and make your point. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Sunstorm, this is. Oh, yeah, you told me. Mr. Derek, I was hacking like that my whole life until now. All you said is true. It's possible to work very hard and still be hacking. That's correct. We don't want to work hard. We don't want to work hard. Work hard is what hackers do. Work hard when it talking about Trumpet, right? Now, getting the job done and you want to call that work hard, that's fine. But when it comes to actually playing, working hard is just emotional. Trying harder is just emotional. Seppo says, do you think trumpet players will be needed in the future, even in small countries? Yes, I do. When MIDI first came out, everybody was afraid they were going to lose their jobs. And I already said back then, this was 1982, I think, no, I'm sorry, mid 80s, 85 maybe, when MIDI first came out. And everyone was saying, oh, we're going to lose our jobs, we're going to lose our jobs. And I said to my friends that by taking live performance out of the music, people are going to be more hungry for live performance. And I was right. I was right. Now, here's the thing. I was also right about something else. I said in the 80s, because up to that point, everybody I ever talked to in music always stressed perfection. With the advent of MIDI being able to play a very difficult passage perfectly every single time, I predicted back then that people were going to have a stronger pull towards expression, because what you have when you have that perfection, you don't have expression. Expression comes from the imperfections. I'll say that again. Expression comes from the imperfections. So we as a civilization in this era of our times, where AI is about to take over, people are going to be more and more hungry for the real thing. And they're not going to want it to be perfect, because the machines can do that. They want to hear a real live person on the other side. I hope that makes sense. They don't want to hear a machine. They want to hear some living, breathing person that has something valuable to express through their instrument. This, by the way, I have in my mind different hierarchies of the most important thing that I teach. What I just shared with you now is the most important thing I teach. All the other stuff is secondary to that. Expression is most important. We're not so worried about perfection. Well, we concern ourselves more with expression, and all the other stuff I teach, the scales, practicing slow, all of that stuff is to facilitate that expression. Karen says, I've been playing more with the two bands now, and thought I'd keep getting stronger, but maybe I need to rest more. That could be. The resting is important. Hello, Adriano. Adriano says, hello, Eddie. Can you talk about consequences from overblowing and not resting enough? I was playing 3 to 4 hours a day with not much rest between my studies. I believe I may have injured my chops. Well, that's possible. It does happen. And here's the thing. Sometimes when you realize that's what's happening and you do something to break from that, it starts a pendulum swinging back and forth that gets even further out of control. So you have to, this thing about what I said about slowing down, extremely important. Slow. So, and I'm sure you can relate to what I'm talking about, because you just said he was playing 3 to 4 hours daily. Who does that? The people that are most eager. That was me in the 80s. That was me. And I really do think I did terrible. I won't call it damage because the only damage I have from the 80s is a muscle. By the way, Mr. Derek, I didn't tell you yet, but I think I have something like what you've got right here from the 80s. I won't go into more details because I'm not sure how much of that you would want anybody to know about. But I have something very similar right here. I can tell you more in your next lesson. But yes, I've had. Mine wasn't so bad that I couldn't play. But it's damage from using too much pressure, which is weird, right? For me to even talk about that because I don't teach the no pressure thing. Anyway, so talking to Adriano, so the consequences can be temporary or permanent. There are types of damage that come from overblowing. The two that I always used to talk about are one, nerve damage. You can have nerve damage if you don't take the horn off your chops. And that cannot be fixed. Okay? But I think it takes a little longer than 3 or 4 hours. And it would require you to not take the horn off your lips at all. Think about it, right? You have the horn on the lips, you don't take the horn off. If it's on there long enough, the nerves underneath the lips, underneath the mouthpiece, don't get oxygen and the nerves die. To my knowledge, nerves don't grow back, right? So that's a permanent condition. There's another condition that happens when you play too loud, where you know how we have the muscle and then the skin over the muscle, right? And what happens when you play, you tighten the muscle and the skin comes in, right? Well, there's a condition that happens when you play too loud, where the muscle and the skin separate. So no matter how much you turn the muscle underneath the skin doesn't move. So you don't get the same tenseness in the you don't get the same tenseness inside the muscle, inside the lips. So that's the kind of thing that happens. That's from serious, really loud playing. And here's what I read in an ITG article, is that is practically permanent, because the surgery that it takes to fix that isn't covered by insurance. So if you have that, then most people can't afford that kind of surgery, especially if you're a musician. Can't afford that kind of surgery, and the insurance not going to pay for it. So you have that separation of the lip and the muscle indefinitely. So now, if you didn't go that far, you don't have nerve damage and you haven't separated your skin from the muscle, then probably you can recover from whatever consequences that you have. And I would have to. I can't tell you more than that because I would have to see you play, and go from there. Seppo says, "Thank you for your wise words." Well, you're welcome. Just have been speaking about using the AI and communicating through it with your colleagues. People seem to need real answers and no AI answers to get along. That's correct. I agree with that. All right. So, Mr. Derek says, "Do you think a muscular embouchure will overcome it? Also, I'm glad to share any trumpet experience. I have no trumpet secrets." For the record, much of my experience is a lesson in what not to do. Well, we're gonna get you straightened out. Okay, we're gonna make that work for you. So yes, if you have the anything but those other two damages, and I heard you play, I know you don't have the two that I listed. So yes, I'm thinking you're very much on your way to recovering. Adriano says, "Some of the things I was able to play in the past, I am completely struggling. This was about a week ago, so I am stopping completely to rest." There you go. "I am hoping it's not permanent. It's general lack of endurance." Okay, well, um, if it's just endurance, then I would probably say that you don't have one of those other two conditions. All right, guys, I went long. I went long on purpose because of the technical difficulties. I apologize for that at the beginning of the video. Thanks for hanging out as always, and we will see you guys next time. I do have a few videos coming out. I hope you check them out. And we'll see you next time. Have a blessed weekend. God bless you. And we'll see you next time. Bye.